Yeah, we are live.
Okay, we can start now.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Priyanshu, for all your assistance, as always. So, hello, everyone. Good evening. And I am Meenakshi, your host for today's session. Uh, I, on behalf of the entire team of Enajuri, would like to welcome all of you. I have Pooja with me, who's also co-hosting the session today. And I can see a lot of new names, which is really good. There are quite a few common names, participants, but a lot of new faces as well. So I, on behalf of the team, would like to heartily welcome all of you and would also just like to briefly take you through what this whole initiative is all about. So, once the country started, having this lockdown and in a pandemic situation, Enajuri, which is a non-profit platform, we've been running a series of webinar sessions. We've been having a lot of discussions, and basically the idea has been to create some kind of a platform which, brings together or generates some kind of a knowledge platform, and we get to know about the kind of work that is happening across the Northeast, particularly focusing on the Northeast, but not just on the Northeast, also looking at the amazing work that is happening all across. So what we have tried to do through the webinar series is that every day we have discussions on a wide range of issues and topics. And Pooja and me, we've been hosting sessions on education. And through this virtual medium, we have invited speakers and engaged with them, gotten to know about their work, how they are engaging at with grassroots communities, and what is it's also helping us build leadership in the process and look at the various initiatives and the amazing work that is happening so far in the last 2-3 months almost now. So in the last 4-5 sessions of particularly speaking on the webinars that we've posted on education, we have had a wide range of discussions, particularly engaging with speakers and entrepreneurs who are working in the field of education, particularly at a time like this when I mean almost every sector has definitely been hit, but education is something that really needs to be looked within because the sector as a whole has been impacted to a great extent. So, and in the midst of all this, there came something as big as, or rather something which was packaged as big, like the National Education Policy 2020. So, a policy which came after almost more than 30 years. And although the policy looks good on paper, we thought that, it's really important for us who are facilitating sessions on education to look at the policy from and try to basically look at read between the lines or look at how much of would actually be feasible or possible as far as working on ground is concerned. So this session particularly, that is the reason we thought that we would restructure the session somewhat different because all the previous sessions that we've had speakers who would come and talk about their work, their engagement, their initiatives. But this session for today is something more like a panel discussion, and we will try to look at the policy. We will try to understand what could be the challenges, how much of it perhaps could also be problematic in terms of implementation on ground. And because we've also realized over time that the kind of discussions that should have happened, at least for Northeast India, that those kind of discussions and deliberations have not really perhaps happened. So we thought that it's important for us as facilitators to create a platform where we could really think from multiple perspectives. And so we have an amazing panel of speakers today, three very important people who are working in the field of education. So we have with us Kankana Borah, we have Gourav Jaiswal, our second speaker, and we have Preeta Brahma. So welcome all of you for today's session. Now, quickly, I'll introduce our speakers for our participants. So Gourav is somebody who has been really vocal on a number of issues, and he has been actively engaging at the grassroots. He comes from a very small district. He's been working in that district. It's a district called Siuni in Madhya Pradesh. And he's the founder of an organization called Agrini. And this organization has been focusing on the issue of education in tribal areas of Southern Madhya Pradesh. And Gaurav has also been a recipient of several awards and fellowships that include the Swedish Institute Fellowship, awards from Mahindra and IIM Lucknow, and many more. And he has always been a vocal commentator and public speaker on various socio-political issues, and also a founding member of several movements, like a very important movement is the Shiksha Satyagrah that he has co-founded, and similar movements like the Kisan Satyagrah. So welcome for the session, Gaurav. I request Pooja to introduce our other two guests for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Meenakshi, and I welcome each and everyone who is here in Zoom and as well as in Facebook Live that we are simultaneously hosting. So let's talk about Preeta Brahma. Basically, she have a corporate and commercial law background, and she has been working in both banking in um, and in academic world. So Preeta is currently working as a in Kokrajhar Law College as the principal in charge since 2017, and she has been doing tremendous work in the field of education, and during the pandemic time also she have done a lot of webinars, national webinars on intellectual property rights and issues of women and children from various national and international universities. And currently she holds she's a member of the academic council of Boroland University also. And our second guest is Kankana Borah. She's a development professional and currently is a senior program manager with Aide Action, and she's been working immensely and extensively all over Assam in terms of implementation of a lot of initiative and a lot of amazing project in terms of access to quality education in government schools. And so like let us start the discussion today. Like I'll just lay out few of the ground rules of our discussion today. So each of the panelists will be given 15 minutes to 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 start talking about your idea and your impression of how do you see the current the new national education policy 2020, and how it will be like implemented, or like the way forward. So beginning, let's call in Kankana Borah, and she will talk about the right base, about like how national education policy can be looked from the lenses of education rights, RTE. So I request Kankana to open your discussion.
Thank you, Pooja, and thank you to the Energy team for having me here. I think it's a wonderful initiative to get talking about the new education policy. I think this is one of its first kind in Northeast, if I'm not wrong. So very glad to be a part of it. So like Meenakshi had already said that, we were right now, we are all amidst the pandemic, and there are simultaneous things happening across everywhere. And we were within this mist, we also have the new education policy. Now, there has been a lot of talk about the new education policy, about how it's going to be a very reformative piece of policy. And it is quite an ambitious policy. It talks about a whole new, a lot of new things. And it also is very pertinent for everyone engaged in education, all actors involved in education, to have a serious look into the policy. And like Meenakshi said, what are the sort of look into between the lines, like look at the subtext rather than the text, and to have a detailed analysis of of the policy. Now, with the NEP 2020, we first got a glimpse of it last year when we had the draft new education policy. There was a lot of when the ministry had when the commission had shared the policy, it was open for a lot of discussions. It invited a lot of feedbacks. A lot of work has revolved around around the draft NEP last year of 2019, and many agencies, many platforms, networks working on education have put in their suggestions. And while many of them have been incorporated, again, like now, because considering it's a new education policy, it requires a detailed look. Now, why is it so important for us to look into the new education policy? Primarily, one, because like the policy itself says that, it's the first education policy of the 21st century. This is the first program, policy that we have, in this century. This is the first time. It has laid on a lot of firsts. So this is the first time that, the new education policy has extended government outreach to preschooling. ECCE is now an integral part of school education. So it has included the ages of 3 to 18 as what constitutes as school education. It has laid a lot of emphasis on equipping children with 21st century skills. It has talked about a lot of transformative work in terms of the nature of board examinations, in terms of dismantling the hard delineations between the various streams, like say the arts and science and the other streams. It also talks a lot about a good aspect of it is also the way it has emphasized on counseling and mental health, right from the early ages, right from school. So it has a lot of it has brought in a lot of new aspects to the discourse of education within the country. It has set up very ambitious tasks. And while doing so, a lot of this, let's be realistic. It's a new education policy. It's not a new policy on education. So, it's the there have been many policies over the course of over the course of many decades back, starting from 1960 when we had the first new education policy. And I would like to touch on three things primarily. One is in terms of the access to entitlements and rights as from the citizenship lens. The second is in terms of the inclusivity, the inclusion aspects of it, and third would be in terms of the implementation aspects of it. Now, in terms of when we view the lens from the lens of from the rights and entitlements lens, the new education policy, it talks about it talks about basic education for children, from 3 to 18. There is within this policy what I and many other many other actors who are involved in education have felt is that there has been not much of emphasis, or there has not much of cognizance of the Right to Education Act. The Right to Education Act is the highest legislation in terms of education in the country. When we are talking about universalization of access to education, the single piece of law that we have for us is the Right to Education Act. Now, when the new education policy talks about inclusion of ECCE, talks about including ages 3 to 18, it sort of misses out on linking it with the Right to Education Act. You cannot have a universal access to education without having a legal law to back it up. So that's one aspect of it. And when we were reading through the policy document, there was a lot of emphasis. And I think this is something which you, everyone must have also felt while going through the document, was that it has a lot of emphasis in terms of what is the objective of education. It talks about how children have to be developed, in addition to cognitive development among children. It also is about say children have to respect the constitutional values and fundamental duties. We are talking about fundamental duties and not much about fundamental rights. The right to education act is a fundamental right of every child to access free and compulsory education. So and somewhere within these within the policy, we are missing out onto the fundamental rights perspective of it. Similarly, we see a lot of emphasis in terms of the whole digital education. Now, currently, I think it's a very it's an ambitious and also it's a good thought to good perspective in terms of in terms of including digital education. But in terms of implementation, let us be honest, we are going through a pandemic where most of the schools have been school closures have been there since mid of March. And again, while many of the private schools and the and the government schools which target for the upper middle class has continued on with online teaching or with digital education, the same cannot be said to the government schools, the rural government schools, or the schools which are run by the which cater to the socio-economically disadvantaged communities. So and that itself shows how in terms of access, how much further we still have to go. So these are some of the aspects that one has to look into. Again, in terms of in terms of it has laid down a lot of things, again, for example, in terms of the whole 6% GDP. This is not something new. This is something which was already shared in the Kothari Commission way back in 1960. And time after in all the succeeding new education policies as well, the emphasis has been on 6% GDP for education. But it's if we look into government spending on education, it has actually gone down. The 6% GDP, we have not achieved it since 1960. And if we are to look at into the current the current government spending, it's less than 4%. So it lays down a lot of new things, but it does not really it doesn't really spell out how do we achieve these reforms, say to so to speak of. Again, it talks about structural reforms, but what about administrative reforms? We are talking about overhauling of, say, overhauling of the entire education discourse. We are talking of inclusion of ECCE in education, and ECC is not just a single department work. There are 5 departments linked in ECCE. So we have the WCD, we have the health and family welfare, we have the social welfare, we have the tribal affairs, and then we also have the Department of Education. Interdepartmental or interdepartmental coordination, we all know how it works out. So given these given these existing realities and challenges, how do we go for a structural reform without talking of administrative reform is something that has to be looked into. Considering that it's a policy, I would still say that we have to be very careful, and we have to be really the main challenges or the main layout of it will only come once the states start developing plans in terms of its implementation. So I think that's where we will have to be quite cautious. there was another aspect in terms of the vocationalization of education. It has talked about, introduction, vocalization, vocational courses from middle school onwards. Let us be honest, like now vocational education is not something new. This is something which Mahatma Gandhi has already said in Nai Talim, which is basically like how there is inclusion of knowledge and work together. Now, a lot of child rights organizations are very cautious about how this is going to work out, considering that it promotes vocationalization from ages from class 6 onwards. We will have to be very careful so that it does not promote dropout among children, that it does not lead to increase in child labor and actually promote children to stop coming to schools and actually go for pursuing work rather than schools. So so far this is my submission so far, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kankana. You have touched upon a lot of interesting points. Like, we'll definitely take up your questions later on. So now I call in Gourav to bring out your thoughts and how do you see this, the challenges or the implementation or the ground reality of how national education policy will look up. Gourav, I hand it over you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. With Meenakshi's permission, I'll try to be bilingual. We'll speak in Hindi and English both. Meenakshi, you're mute.
Yeah. We try to keep it bilingual. So, I to kotha patibo chesta korim. Gourav doesn't understand Assamese, so he'll also try to, speak Hindi and English both. Thank you.
Thank you, Meenakshi. So one thing is that I'll try to talk about the socio-political aspect of this policy, and we'll also try not to get into very details of what is written in words, but try to talk more on intent side of the policy. What inferences are there that we can take out after reading it. So one thing is that I want to thank New Education Policy a lot, because for I think after a decade I got to hear from the national leadership talking on education. So I don't remember when the last time I heard Prime Minister talking something about education at all. So since last 6 years at least, our Prime Minister is delivering a lot of speeches, political, non-political, in Parliament, out of Parliament, in political rallies, in election campaigns. But I don't remember when the last time I heard something on education from him. So I want to thank New Education Policy for that at least people started talking about education. At least leadership talked about education firstly. Second is that, so when we talk about policies, one thing is policy, second thing is framework. So we already have a national curriculum framework in place since 2005. If you look at national curriculum framework, there are a lot of things which are already mentioned in NCF, which are there in this policy also. As the previous speaker mentioned about Kothari Commission, which in 1968, like 52 years before, recommended a 6% expenditure of GDP in education, but we still are not doing it. And I just want to add one more thing to it, that this government, like the BJP, when they came to power in 2014, if you see the manifesto, BJP's manifesto of 2014 election, the first point in their manifesto was to spend 6% of GDP in education. It's been it's the 7th year going on that they're in power. I don't see it happening yet. Even I think the same regime is the one which actually took the expenditure on education to its least, which was 2.8%, if I'm not wrong, in 2015. So 15-16 budget. So once again, this is what I'm trying to say, that one thing is wishful thinking, thinking of great things, talking of wonderful ideas, writing down these wonderful ideas in a policy document. And second is to take them to ground. And when we think of what is that which will be translated into ground, we'll have to see how the governments have been functioning. This is one thing. Now, another important question that I want to raise is who, if I look at this document and think that who is going to deliver education? I repeat myself, who is going to deliver education? Looking at this policy, when it'll come to action and this policy will change the laws and will change the procedures and regulations in the country, who is going to deliver the education? Is it the government which is going to deliver the education? Which means is that government is planning to strengthen its government schools? Is that government is planning to strengthen its teacher education program? Is that they are planning to build more schools? Is that they're planning to recruit more teachers? Is that they're planning to regularize the contract teachers? Or is it social institution, the philanthropic social institutions going to deliver the education, which is also mentioned in the policy? They mentioned this term philanthropic in the policy. Or is it going to be the private parties which are going to deliver education? So this is my question, that who is going to deliver education going through, if we move ahead with this policy? What I think is that government, like this policy clearly takes us towards privatization of education. And there are multiple evidences present within this policy to prove this. This policy talks about regulatory authority. We have seen in our policies before that when a regulatory authority is introduced, it is introduced to regulate private players. It is introduced to manage a bigger private infrastructure which is going to act within the sector. For an example, SEBI, the Security and Exchange Board, came into an action when the number of private banks, MFIs, and all these private finance institutions kind of scaled up within the country. So looking at these kind of changes of introduction of a regulatory authority and all that, I think it is very clear that government wants, like this policy makes it very, very clear that we are moving towards privatization of education. Now, on the other hand, the same policy says that we do not want commercialization of education to happen. So I think it is also a very intelligent tweak of words, that on principle, you say that we do not want commercialization to happen, but on the other hand, we are opening doors for privatization. I don't know how it makes sense. As more the private players, more the privatization will happen. Commercialization will happen for sure. I don't know how it is going to work. So I think this is another important submission of mine, which is about NEPs, that it opens door for privatization of education. And there are multiple evidences within the policy document which makes it very, very clear. अब मैं और 2-3 बातों पे अपना कमेंट करना चाहता हूँ. एक जो एक बात और है जो बार बार कही जा रही है कि इट इज़ द फर्स्ट टाइम दैट प्री स्कूलिंग एजुकेशन इज बीइंग इंट्रोड्यूस्ड। तो प्री स्कूलिंग एजुकेशन जो है वो यदि आप राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट देखेंगे तो बहुत सारे स्टेट एक्ट्स में प्री स्कूलिंग एजुकेशन ऑलरेडी इंक्लूडेड था। जैसे मध्य प्रदेश में, जहाँ से मैं आता हूँ, यहाँ प्री स्कूलिंग एजुकेशन पिछले 10 सालों से आरटी के एक्ट के अंदर है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली अगर आप देखें तो आई एम नॉट श्योर कि कितना अंतर आया है, बहुत अंतर नहीं आया है। तो फिर वही बात है कि क्या हम इट इज़ नॉट ओनली अबाउट राइटिंग थिंग्स बट इट इज़ ऑल्सो अबाउट गेटिंग देम ऑन ग्राउंड। कुछ जो अलग अलग अब अंत में मैं 3-4 चीज़ों पे और कमेंट करना चाहता हूँ जिन विषयों पे काफ़ी ज़्यादा बात हो रही है। एक बात जो है वो है मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी एजुकेशन की हायर एजुकेशन में। और बहुत से लोग ये मानते हैं कि जैसे मैं अलग अलग कुछ एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर्स का इस पे टेक देख रहा था, मैं दिल्ली के एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर का इस पे टेक देख रहा था, उनका कहना है कि IITs या IIMs या ये जो NFT, ये जो स्पेशलाइजेशन या इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ एक्सीलेंस हैं, इनमें दूसरे डिसिप्लिन को इंट्रोड्यूस करने से नुकसान होगा। मैं मानता हूँ कि ये गलत, कि ऐसा नहीं होगा और ये बहुत ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि हायर एजुकेशन का पर्पस जो है वो सिर्फ प्रोफेशनल्स पैदा करना नहीं है। हायर एजुकेशन का पर्पस देश के जागरूक नागरिक पैदा करना भी है, जो देश में देश की राजनीतिक दशा दिशा को समझें, देश की सामाजिक दशा दिशा को समझें। और एक बहुत बड़ी समस्या हम ये भी देखते आ रहे थे अब तक की, अलग अलग उदाहरण के तौर पे पूरी की पूरी इंजीनियरिंग की पढ़ाई में ह्यूमैनिटीज का, हिस्ट्री का, इकोनॉमिक्स का, जियोग्राफी का, देश के कल्चर का, इस विषय में इवन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का, सिविक्स का एक क्लास भी नहीं लगता। और हम डॉक्टर बन जाते हैं, हम इंजीनियर बन जाते हैं, हम प्रोफेशनल तो बन जाते हैं, हम स्किल तो हो जाते हैं, लेकिन इस पूरी हमारी मेन स्ट्रीम की पढ़ाई में हमें एक नागरिक बनाने की प्रक्रिया में कुछ भी नहीं सिखाया जाता, कुछ भी नहीं पढ़ाया जाता। और शायद उसी का हम रिजल्ट देखते हैं कि बड़ी संख्या में ये जो पढ़े लिखे तथाकथित पढ़े लिखे हमारे प्रोफेशनल दोस्त हैं, उनकी भारत की राजनीति, भारत के कल्चर, भारत की संस्कृति, यहाँ के विविधता के विषय में जानकारी बहुत कम होती है। और ये मुझे लगता है एक बहुत अच्छा स्टेप है जिसको मैं इस पॉलिसी में अप्रिशिएट करूंगा कि हमें मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी एजुकेशन की तरफ तो बढ़ना चाहिए। लेकिन फिर वही एक और इसमें प्रश्न जो बचा रहेगा वो यही रहेगा कि शिक्षा दे कौन रहा है? क्या शिक्षा सरकार दे रही है, या शिक्षा सामाजिक संस्थाएं दे रही हैं, या शिक्षा प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स दे रहे हैं? इस अगली बात जिस पे मैं कमेंट करना चाहूंगा वो है मदर टंग वाला प्रश्न, कि हमने कहा कि मातृभाषा में हम प्राइमरी की शिक्षा देंगे। अब जो मातृभाषा का प्रश्न है वो, उसमें भारत की जो विविधता है वो इसमें बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज प्ले करने वाला है। वो ये है कि यदि मैं सिर्फ मध्य प्रदेश की बात करूं तो मध्य प्रदेश में अलग अलग क्षेत्र में अलग अलग मातृभाषाएं हैं लोगों की। अब इसमें भाषा और बोली का कोई फर्क कर दे तो कर दे, लेकिन जो बच्चे हैं उनके लिए तो बोली ही भाषा होती है, क्योंकि उनके घर में जो बोली बोली जाती है, जो डायलेक्ट बोला जाता है, उस पे ही वही उनके लिए वही उनकी मदर टंग है। तो सिर्फ मध्य प्रदेश में बुंदेली भी बोला जाता है, बघेली भी बोली जाती है, निमाड़ी भी बोली जाती है, गोंडी भी बोली जाती है, और ऐसी बहुत सारी बोलियां हैं जो यहाँ घरों में प्रयोग होती हैं, समाज में प्रयोग होती है। तो ऐसी स्थिति में फिर प्राइमरी के बच्चे को किस भाषा में, किस बोली में तैयार किया जाएगा? और यदि हमने इसमें सिर्फ हिंदी को मातृभाषा मान लिया तो ये एक तरह से हमारी क्षेत्रीय बोलियों को, जो कि लगभग भारत में 1600 क्षेत्रीय बोलियां हैं, उनके लिए एक खतरे की तरह ये आएगा। और क्योंकि मेरे इस वक्त हमारे इस कॉल में, इस लाइव में बहुत सारे पूर्वोत्तर के, नॉर्थ ईस्ट के साथी जुड़े हुए हैं, तो मुझे लगता है कि वहाँ भी क्योंकि बहुत जबरदस्त डाइवर्सिटी है बोलियों की, तो एक डोमिनेंट इशू ये वहाँ भी होना चाहिए। मेरे अंतिम 3 मिनट बचे हुए हैं, शायद 2 मिनट बचे हुए हैं, तो मैं आखिरी एक बात और कह करके अपनी इस सबमिशन को खत्म करूंगा, और वो है टेस्टिंग पे। टेस्टिंग का जो यानी हम असल में हम शिक्षा को थोड़ा इवॉल्व करने के रास्ते में बढ़ रहे थे पिछले कुछ सालों से। राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट ने जिस तरीके से CCE पे, कांस्टेंट एंड क्यूमुलेटिव असेसमेंट पे, एग्जामिनेशन पे जोर दिया था, उसके बाद हम थोड़े लिबरल एग्जामिनेशंस की तरफ बढ़ रहे थे कि हम बच्चे के असेसमेंट को थोड़ा लिबरल बनाएं, हम उसे आसान बनाएं। और उसके पीछे एक बहुत बड़ा कारण ये भी है कि हमारे देश में हम वही बात समझ रहे हैं ना कि साल भर बच्चे ने पढ़ा और हमने एक 3 घंटे के टेस्ट में ये तय कर लिया कि वो अच्छा क्या सीखा और क्या नहीं सीखा, तो ये तो संभव नहीं है। तो ऐसी परिस्थिति में हम धीरे धीरे CC के माध्यम से हम लिबरल टेस्टिंग के असेसमेंट की तरफ बढ़ रहे थे। लेकिन ये जो पॉलिसी है ये बात तो करती है CC की, लेकिन एक जो फिर वही बात टेस्टिंग अथॉरिटी, नेशनल टेस्टिंग अथॉरिटी की बात हो रही है, तो हम कहीं ना कहीं फिर एक बार उसी दिशा में बढ़ रहे हैं। हम बोर्ड एग्जामिनेशंस पे फिर एक बार ये पॉलिसी जो है वो एम्फेसाइज कर रही है, जबकि हमें शायद मैं उम्मीद करता था कि ये पॉलिसी ये कहेगी कि इतने समय में, इस टाइम स्लॉट में हम बोर्ड एग्जामिनेशंस को एबॉलिश कर देंगे, लेकिन ऐसा ये पॉलिसी नहीं कहती है, ये इसके उलट बात करती है। तो अभी के लिए मेरे यही मोटे मोटे सबमिशंस हैं, और फिर मैं लौट करके उस इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन को रेज करना चाहता हूँ कि व्हेन वी गो थ्रू दिस पॉलिसी, व्हेन वी लुक एट इट, वी मस्ट ask this question that after this policy coming in and moving ahead with this policy, who is going to deliver education? Is it government which is going to deliver education? Is it social and philanthropic organizations which are going to deliver education, or is it private players going to deliver education? In my opinion, if we read even like through the words and between the words of this policy document, we'll realize that it is actually taking us towards privatization of education. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. We'll move on to our next speaker, Preeta Brahma. Over to you, Preeta.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Anajuri team, for including me in this panel discussion of National Education Policy 2020, and my friend Meenakshi and Pooja for inviting me, and it's a great honor to be a part of this discussion. And yeah, the Gaurav and Kankana ma'am, both of you have actually rightly said that who is providing education and whether this particular policy, it is actually abiding by or the following the rules and the laws of RT 2009 or not. So moving on, and I feel that it's actually the policy is very good. It's a constructive policy moving towards a constructive education system. But I also have few 3 points actually, that 3 clauses of the policy that I also feel there is some kind of problem with it. So which I will be discussing towards the end of my discussion. And this national education policy having an aims and objectives that I could see, one of the most attractive aims and objective is learning how to learn. So which is one of the very important aspects I feel that we all must know how to learn and how to learn to learn. Because being a teacher of a law college, I also feel that we are failing miserably in order to attain the quality education sometimes. And this particular policy, it talks about the overall development following the integrity and ethics, right from the childhood education towards the higher education. And this particular policy, it talks about giving an opportunity to a child so that the child can critically think and include the child in the activity. It should be activity-based learning, which I also feel is one of the most important when it comes to learning, that the students must be involved in activities. But even I, being a teacher, I have failed miserably in giving works to the teachers and making them work and a teamwork. I would like to share my experience here. Like regularly, we have this under Guwahati University, as we are affiliated under Guwahati University right now. So we have a 20-mark slot for the internal assessment and assignment. So for this particular purpose, what I do for the 10 marks assignment is I give students as a teamwork, like 5 to 6 people, you write an assignment or prepare a project on this particular topic. And what happens is, like, because of I don't know what, one of the students will write the whole assignment, and others would just come and read it in front of the class. So I also, being a teacher, I have felt miserably in order to make the students work in a teamwork actually, and which I feel this particular area has been addressed in this particular policy, and I appreciate the government for bringing up this particular matter and including this teamwork as a part of the education. And also, one of the important factor that I would like to applaud is a curbing of routine learning. It's like by hearting, because I also as a student, I had faced lots of difficulties in by hearting. Like for example, remembering multiple tables like 1 to 20. I cannot remember being a kid. And also that if we as a teacher, if we involve the kids in order to how to remember numbers, how to play with the numbers, is being addressed in this particular policy. It's like by telling the story, by some kind of game activity. So if numbers can be played with the students, I feel that, we as a society, we can develop this fun learning, and at the same time, in order to attain the highest quality education. And right, Kankana ma'am has talked about early childhood care education. I also have to say here, a little bit of emphasis has been given on the Anganabadi workers also. I have a problem with this particular aspect is, when I have read the policy, I saw that Anganabadi workers, the current Anganabadi workers, will be given a training of 6 months by online mode or through a DTH. That means in the Tata Sky or maybe in some other channel, they will provide trainings to the Anganabadi workers. Now, I want to address that how far will it be effective? Because Anganabadi workers are the ones who will be taking care of the childhood in the early stage of the child, that 3+2 education, the preparatory stage. So how far the Anganabadi workers will be able to learn through online mode in the 6 months, and how are they going to implement whatever they have learned in the online mode, and how are they going to implement in their Anganabadi centers in providing childhood care to the children. It's one of the problem that I felt after reading this national education policy. However, at the same time, I applaud that the instruction of medium, like the home language that we formally call it as mother tongue. So when it's a medium of instruction, it's good. It's one of the good initiative, and making the higher education also in a bilingual. Like for example, what is the law? For example, right now under Guwahati University, we do not have any other kind of instruction except for English. But at the same time, when we talk about other general degree courses like for education or other subjects, they have Assamese at the same time English. They can opt for in which medium they would want to write the examination or they would like to study. So, and in the Guwahati University, there was a discussion where I was also a part of the syllabus committee meeting, where a discussion between the principals and the head of the Department of Law had taken place that we must also introduce Assamese as one of the medium of instruction to teach law, which I don't know what is the development of it. And so it's one of the good initiative. And when I talk about law, again here, as most of you may be aware that legal education and the medical education have been excluded from this particular policy, because they have decided to bring all the regulating authority under one umbrella, that is Higher Education Commission of India, and wherein again legal education and medical education are excluded. But at the same time, this particular policy, it talks about also the professional courses like the law courses and all the other multidisciplinary education should introduce bilingual learning. So there's a little conflict, and I really don't know why law is excluded, because maybe we will still be regulated by BCI. Because being a law college, we are regulated by actually 3 to 4 regulating authorities. We have one university who guides us with the syllabus and who conducts examination for us and who gives us affiliation. On the other hand, we have BCI who will discuss about the legal education, the rules, about the infrastructure, about the legal education rules they will talk about, and which we have to abide because we have regular inspection by the BCI. And other hand, we have UGC, who to UGC rules also we have to follow in terms of appointment of teachers and all the other staff, and in terms of providing salary. So we are regulated by 3 regulating authorities, and also we have MHRD, to whom regularly every year we send reports, because we are allotted IC code, and we have to send yearly reports to the MHRD also. So right now we are regulated by 4 authorities, through 4 statutory bodies we are regulated by. So it's a good move. I feel that maybe legal education also be included under this national education policy, and then maybe some kind of changes may be brought by BCI in consistency with this NEP. I really hope so. And when it another aspect that I would like to talk about is the duration of the courses and the multiple entry and exit. So duration of the courses in terms of higher education, I see that UG courses has to be either of 3 years or 4 years. And after 1 year, if a student wants to decide to leave, then he or she will be getting some kind of certificate, appropriate certificate, and 2 years diploma certificate, and after 3 years bachelor degree. Now I really don't know how will this be implemented, because this policy it implements in phases. Some of the clauses will be implemented from 2022, some will be 25, some will be 30, 35, 40. So I don't know how is this going to be implemented and in what phase. And the problem with the multiple entry and exit is what type of job opportunity will be provided to those students who decides to leave after 1 year. And those who decides to leave after 2 years, what kind of opportunity? Will they be treated equally like the people having a degree or bachelor certificate? And moreover, like right now, the UPSC or APSC or you say any other state commission examination, they would require a particular student to be graduate to be able to be eligible to appear that examination. So will that opportunity be given to those students who decides to leave after 1 or 2 years? And if they are also being given the opportunity, then why will people want to acquire 3 years and want to grab a degree of bachelor? So that's one thing. And another is that here the 4 years course, it says that if a particular student does a 3-year bachelor degree, and one, if he dedicates in his research work, then the 3 years master degree like MCA has 3 years master degree. So maybe they will have 2 years, and then those who take up an integrated course of 5 years, then and 1 year if they allot for research, then they will be directly eligible to take PhD. So I feel there is a little bit of it's a little complicated in my opinion, I feel, and I do not know how will it be implemented. And rather than waiting, actually we have no other choice. We should just wait maybe for how will they be implemented. And when it comes to school education, another area that I would like to appreciate is the state has been given little responsibilities, like in order state school setting up of state school standards authority. Now they will be the authority that will have some kind of power, and also the assessment when it comes to SQAAF that I could see here, who will accredit the school by consulting the other stakeholders. So this policy intends to not differentiate between private, public, like Gourav has said that it is moving towards privatization, whereas it restrains for commercialization of education. Like the education institution should not be commercialized, it should not be for a profit institution, is what he has also mentioned. Now I also feel like how will this be implemented, and the existing boards that we have in Assam, will they work along with them, or they will have separate rules and guidelines? That also we are not sure about, and it's not mentioned clearly in the policy. And another aspect with school education that I would like to say is the Indian Sign Language will be standardized. This national education policy talks about, which is actually commendable because we are talking about inclusive learning, and this particular policy, it mentions in their policy that this particular policy will abide by the rules and the laws of the RPW, the Rights with Persons of Disabilities Act 2016. They will abide by the rules and regulations of 2016 Act. This particular policy talks about. So I think then the inclusive learning, it will happen like the person, the students with hearing impairment, that in common language we call it as deaf, maybe they would also be included in the same school like other students. So that particular perspective that I appreciate about. And but again, it comes to training, right? So there is a timeline. They say that by 2025 or 2030. So within that particular period of time, will be trained, because I am also not trained when it comes to sign language, or how to teach the visually impaired student, or how to teach the people who cannot hear, how to teach them, because I am also not trained. So what kind of training facilities will we be provided, that we are not sure about. And this particular policy has given a lot of emphasis on the distance learning also. Now, again, I have a problem with that, because I do not I do not want to offend people pursuing distance learning, which is actually good. I encourage that. But again, at the same time, you know, the current statutory body that we have, the UGC, University Grants Commission, it somewhere it says that a teacher cannot become a teacher if he or she has pursued education in a distance mode. Then if we encourage distance learning, then will they be again deprived when it comes to job opportunity? Because for some purpose, a particular person may want to opt for this distance learning. Will they be given a similar opportunity like those who is pursuing in a regular mode? So that also is unclear, and little bit of flexibility is given to the teachers, and the higher education institutions be converted to multidisciplinary research university, and setting up of National Research Foundation, which is again commendable, and it says that by 2035 the colleges has to be in a position to award degree and not to be affiliated under any university. So I think my time is up. I could cover much about it, but little bit, if I have time, then I would like to say that again we have NAC, that is Accreditation Council, who accredits us. Now, what if one particular college gets A+ and some other college gets C+? Then the particular college who is getting C+ from the NAC, will they also be given the opportunity to award degrees? Is what I feel. Then what about the quality? Well, how are we dealing with the quality education? Is what I had to say, and this is what I had to say in this 10 to 15 minutes of my time. And with this I end. Thank you one and all, and if anybody has any problem or issue that from my lecture, or anybody has a debate, I'm open for it. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, Preeta, so much for your for the insight that you have put up, definitely. And like, I thank each and everyone, Kankana, Gourav, and Preeta as well. So, you know, this is a new policy where we are seeing both sides of the debate. Like, people are really appreciating the innovation, you know, the kind of extensive experimental, you know, how to put it. So, like, you know, it seems like a lot of effort has been put into build up the education in a new format, or rather, you know, to build up what is already been existing. So, like, right now I have two major questions. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, लोग ये पूछ रहे हैं कि भाई मैट्रिक और +2 का एग्जाम हैज बीन गॉन ओवर, क्या वो चीज को हम लोग वी आर डन विथ मैट्रिक, एंड दैट इज द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन वी हैव गॉट. एंड सेकेंडली, जो न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है वो कब होगा और कैसे होगा, इसका फंडिंग का division कौन कर रहा है, like who is doing it. So whether the onus will fall completely on the central government, or like it will be divided between the state and the central government, or can you give us an insight of how the new education policy will actually be implemented? Kankana, would you like to take over the question?
Okay, I will not talk about the board exams one. I would leave it to someone who would have an appropriate answer for that. I don't have it right now. But in terms of the policy, in terms of the implementation of the policy, Pooja, this is bilingual, right? I can also speak in Assamese.
Yeah.
Okay. So আমি যেতিয়া ইমপ্লিমেন্টেশনৰ কথা কওঁ, I think আমি মনত ৰাখিব লাগিব কি education is a concurrent subject. It's the responsibility of both the central government as well as the states. So it is going to be both the state and the central government's responsibility and also duty to in terms of the implementation of the components embedded into the policy. In terms of implementation, there is not going to be much of changes from what I see. Considering that we will in term right now in Ohomote ami jetia kotha patisu education minister koise ki mane they have already started the work for the plan of implementation. So there has been a 40-member committee which has been constituted, and the government is expected to have a blueprint for the implementation by early 2021. So hekhini leke mane hekhini leke bostukhini bhaba goise. Kintu jiman khini mane everyone keep we will have to be very very cautious about the whole aspect of it being a very new policy. It's not a very new policy. Most of what has been what is incorporated in the policy has also been suggested by previous policies. But what it does in terms of the larger structural reforms, again, administrative reforms if things don't change in terms of the administrative structures and the administrative reforms, the percolation of it in the envisaged manner grounded ketao teneke nohoyge. So bahut khini kwa goise in terms of transferring of powers in terms of ECCE now being looked after by Department of Education, setting up of setting of this again eta kotha kwa goise in terms of setting up of school complexes. This is going to be I think we all know how school management committees, what has been the success of school management committees since the past more than since 10 years of its implementation of RTE. And we are talking about creation of new structures again. So this is going to be quite a lengthy process. It's going to be quite a it's going to be quite a exhaustive process as well. That's it from me, Pooja.
Okay. Gourav, would you like to add something to it?
No, I think I would have said the same thing.
Yeah, Gourav, I have a question for you. When we talk about language, ऐसा होता है कि when you talk about tribal working in tribal areas, the school जो language disperse किया जाता है, जिस बोली या जिस भाषा से medium of instruction होता है या जो बच्चे होते हैं, how do you see it impacting in the sense अगर हम लोग आदिवासी के बारे में ही बात करें तो there are lots of regional dialect, and it may not be possible for having resources from each and everyone. So when we talk about language assimilation या जो language को हम लोग importance दे रहे, so in terms of tribal areas and in mainland or mainstream areas, how do you see that mode of instruction or education will go, or how do you see it can be implemented?
थैंक यू पूजा. आई थिंक मैं लैंग्वेज के क्वेश्चन को थोड़े और बड़े फ्रेमवर्क में रखना चाहता हूँ. देखिए, भाषा जो है वो सिर्फ मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं है. भाषा सिर्फ कम्युनिकेशन करने का माध्यम भी नहीं है. भाषा मेरी नज़र में वो स्पेस है जहाँ पे रीजनल या फिर किसी भी तरीके का नॉलेज स्टोर होता है. लैंग्वेज इज अ स्पेस वेयर वी स्टोर नॉलेज, वेयर वी क्रिएट नॉलेज. तो जब चाहे हम मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन की बात करें या हम कोई भी बात करें, लैंग्वेज एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट बात है. और अगर आप मिकाले का सबमिशन पढ़ेंगे, जो बहुत अक्सर जिसके बारे में बात की जाती है कि भारतीय शिक्षा व्यवस्था को बर्बाद करने के लिए लॉर्ड मिकाले का जो ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट में सबमिशन था, उसमें लैंग्वेज को लेकर के एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात उन्होंने कही थी कि किस तरह से जो रीजनल लैंग्वेजेस हैं, उनको रीजनल डायलेक्ट्स हैं, उनके प्रति लोगों में हीन भावना पैदा हो ताकि लोग अंग्रेजी को स्वीकार कर लें. और एक बार आप एक दूसरी भाषा को स्वीकार जब करते हैं, मान लीजिए मैं जिस क्षेत्र में हूँ वहाँ पे एक विद्यार्थी है जो जिसकी मातृभाषा गोंडी है, गोंड जनजाति से है और उसकी मातृभाषा गोंडी है. अभी उसके घर में गोंडी भाषा में बात की जाती है, लेकिन जैसे ही हम उसे ये समझा देते हैं कि अंग्रेजी एक बेहतर भाषा है या फिर गोंडी एक हीन भाषा है, वैसे ही हम ये भी समझा देते हैं कि अंग्रेजी में लिखा हुआ ज्ञान बेहतर है. तो जो नॉलेज अंग्रेजी में लिखा गया है वो बेटर है. और जैसे ही हम ये करते हैं तो हम सारे रीजनल नॉलेज जो है, जो कि शायद हजारों सालों का, सदियों का तैयार किया हुआ एक सांस्कृतिक ज्ञान है, हम उसे साइडलाइन कर देते हैं, उससे हम पीछे छोड़ देते हैं. तो इसलिए तो मैं कह रहा हूँ कि लैंग्वेज को हमें हमेशा एक लार्जर फ्रेमवर्क में देखने की जरूरत है. और जब हम एनईपी के विषय में बात करेंगे इसे समझते हुए, तो बहुत जरूरी बात यह है कि इसमें हम चीजों को सेंट्रलाइज करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. हम कह रहे हैं कि सब कुछ केंद्र से संचालित हो जाएगा, ये अथॉरिटी बन जाएगी, वो अथॉरिटी बन जाएगी, परख बन जाएगा, वो जो एक बोर्ड है जो असेसमेंट को के बारे में गाइडलाइंस जारी करेगा या उसको रेगुलेट करेगा. अब क्वेश्चन ये है कि गोंडी भाषा में अगर इंस्ट्रक्शन हो रहा है तो परख जो है, जो आपका अथॉरिटी है जो शायद स्टेट या नेशनल लेवल पे है, वो कैसे उसको असेसमेंट करेगा या कैसे उस पर गाइडलाइन जारी करेगा? क्या आपके पास इतने सारे रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स होंगे, जितनी सारी भाषाओं के लोग वहाँ एक जगह होंगे? तो ये संभव नहीं है. तो कहीं ना कहीं हमें जिस तरीके के डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन के हम उम्मीद कर रहे थे वो इसमें नहीं है, और इसीलिए ये जो भाषा का प्रश्न है ये बहुत कठिन हो जाता है.
Okay, thank you, Gaurav, for touching upon the language issue, which was already been, contested for so many reasons, and also because of the diversity of the country per se. I also want to add in something here. I mean, you have already touched upon this point on privatization. So we already have this whole issue, and we're grappling with this whole issue of privatization because with the mushrooming of business or corporate schools that is happening all across in big cities, and the fee structure and all of that. So recently, in fact, Manish Sisodia, who is also the education minister of Delhi, he also was quite critical of this whole privatization business because the policy also has been particularly focusing on, they are saying that they'll also allow foreign universities would be allowed entry in the country. And so he said that, this whole business is anyways, even if it's focusing on the philanthropic participation, this whole big chain of schools and educational institutions which is primarily based on the philanthropic model is also something like which the Supreme Court had once referred to as teaching shops. So what exactly are we trying to say? I mean, are we pushing towards more of a privatization of education, which we were initially very critical of? I want to know, I mean, also Kankana and Preeta can pitch in. Gaurav, maybe first you can take the question.
Yes, I just want to add something to it, Meenakshi.
Yeah, sure.
बात इसमें यह है कि जब हम प्राइवेटाइजेशन की बात कर रहे हैं तो हम एक पूरा प्राइवेट सेक्टर, एक बहुत बड़ा सेक्टर मिस कर दे रहे हैं, और वो है कोचिंग क्लासेस.
Right.
जो शायद स्कूलों से भी अब बड़ा बिजनेस है.
And I think this question is also relevant because you mentioned who exactly is providing the education. Is it the government? Is it these corporate houses? Whose education? What is being taught? So it also would relate to content at some level. Yeah, sorry for coming in.
So what I think is that even there are private schools in one hand, but even if there are private schools, there are at least schools. उनके लिए कोई रेगुलेशन है, कोई व्यवस्था है, कुछ तो है, लेकिन जब हम कोचिंग क्लासेस की बात करते हैं तो कोई व्यवस्था ही नहीं है वहां, उनका कोई स्ट्रक्चर नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है. एंड देन वी सी दैट देयर आर BSc लिस्टेड कंपनीज who are actually private coaching institutions. तो ऐसी परिस्थिति में हमें ये तो, और अब फिर NEP को देखते हैं कि क्या NEP इस विषय में क्या कर रहा है. क्या NEP हमें क्या NEP इसके अगेंस्ट है? क्या NEP के आने से कोचिंग क्लासेस बंद होंगे या कोचिंग का बिजनेस जो है उसमें से, क्योंकि हम कमर्शियलाइजेशन के तो खिलाफ हैं तो क्योंकि बोलते ही पॉलिसी यही रही है कि हम तो कमर्शियलाइजेशन के खिलाफ हैं, जो कि एक झूठ है लेकिन सच बात है कि तो इट इज टेकिंग अस टुवर्ड्स कमर्शियलाइजेशन. तो पर पॉलिसी बोल रही है नेशनल टेस्टिंग अथॉरिटी, यानी हम असल में स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड टेस्टिंग को प्रमोट करना चाहते हैं. स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड टेस्टिंग जितना प्रमोट होगा उतना कोचिंग क्लासेस प्रमोट होंगे, उतना ज्यादा कोचिंग क्लासेस का बिजनेस फ्लरिश होगा. तो असल में जो मैं बात बार बार कह रहा हूँ कि ये जो पॉलिसी है वो सारे प्राइवेट, और अभी मैं एक बहुत बड़े और नए इमर्जिंग प्राइवेट स्पेस को अभी मैंने मेंशन नहीं किया, जो है ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन की कंपनीज, जो अपने आप में बहुत जबरदस्त दुकानदारी सेटअप हो रही है पूरी दुनिया में. कोई जिसके पीछे रेगुलेशन नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, जिसका मन करेगा वो वीडियो अपना ऑन करेगा और बच्चे को पढ़ाना शुरू कर देगा. तो कोई तो ये भी एक और, तो ये जो दो बड़े मार्केट्स हैं उनको प्रमोट करने पे, और ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन पे एक पैराग्राफ लिखा भी हुआ है इसमें जो पढ़ा जाना चाहिए. तो ये दोनों बड़े मार्केट्स, कोचिंग का भी ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन का, दोनों बड़े मार्केट्स को प्रमोट करने का काम ये पॉलिसी कर रही है.
Okay. Kankana and Preeta, do you want to pitch in?
Yes, I think जो बात गौरव ने कही, like no, completely agree with that, because the policy talks about curtailing commercialization of education, and at the same time it also talks about promoting private public partnership and encouraging private philanthropic organizations. We need to keep in mind that 60 to 65% of all school-going children in the country go to government schools. So when we are talking about inviting private partnerships or philanthropic organizations, we need to remember that these are not going to the middle class areas, or they are not going to be replacing KVKs. These would be targeted at the these would be set up and targeted at the same geographies where access to education is very poor. So rather than strengthening government commitments, rather than strengthening, say, existing schools, the NEP may it keeps talking about how important, it has probably laid the greatest emphasis on foundational numeracy and literacy, and at the same breath, it says that we need to promote it will create special education zones where it would invite private public partnerships. We are talking about inviting private players in geographies where people it's a challenge of educating children merely because of the costs. So and it's in no way going to increase access. It's going to rather further strengthen this divide between between the quality of access.
Right. Preeta?
So when we talk about online education and privatization of the education, actually, I also believe that online education cannot be an alternate to the regular mode of education. And I think this particular policy, it emphasizes a little more about online education also, because it gives a liberty to the teachers of the education center to design their mode of teaching. If they want to teach through an online mode, and if they also want to involve traditional mode of blend of traditional and online mode of teaching. And yeah, I also believe that online mode of education cannot be an alternate. And only because of this pandemic and or epidemic situation, this online mode of learning should be encouraged, I believe. And other than that, I also feel we need regulation, and we cannot curb out also online education system, because I believe that this COVID is actually a blessing in disguise, because we could able to see each other, and we could, interact with the far away people, which maybe wouldn't have been possible in the regular scenario. And when it comes to private institutions, like our college is also a private institution. And when we talk about not-for-profit, and actually our college being a private college, we are not-for-profit organization. Actually, we take very minimal fee from the students. And the problem is that our colleges, law colleges in Assam, for example, if you take, we have been existing after independence, but still the government is not taking any initiative to regularize or to convert private law colleges into the government colleges. The government is also not taking any initiative. And moreover, when we talk about government institution, maybe they also need to see that nowadays every student who have a minimum marks, who have minimum percentage, they cannot get enrolled in the government colleges, because they have their requirement, the marks that they require to enroll a student is quite high. So which is why the students may end up entering into private colleges and private schools. So that is also one of the factor, and we have to see then if government colleges, are they ready to take up the students who has a minimal marks with the least marks, maybe 39 or 40, will they be taking admission to those students? So that is also one of the aspects I feel that we need to check. And yeah, so that's about a private private thing. That's it actually from my side.
Yeah, like I have for Kangana's question, and like I can look at you.
Pooja, your audio is echoing.
Hello?
Your audio is echoing, I think.
Can you hear? Am I clear now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah. Kangana, we have seen over the years, like how development or agencies or organization have played a very crucial role in the RTE Act, through various implementation of projects. So with the National Education Policy 2020, do you see the change of theme, or like how would you approach now the projects which will be in near future? Do you see, like, you will be reevaluating the kind of objectives, or the methodology that you have been implemented till now? Do you see there will be any kind of changes in it? And I would request you to have an ending remark so that we can let you go.
Okay. The work of development agencies is not to create parallel structures or to start schools. That's not the mandate of development agencies or or non-government organizations. It is to make the state accountable to its obligations. That is what that is the mandate of civil society organizations. And when we push for state accountability, it is always through a legal framework, and that is why that is why civil society organizations or development agencies would would push for policy advocacy from a legal framework. And for us, that is the Right to Education Act. When we talk about implementation of the of NEP 2020, it has to be through a legal framework. It has to if education is a public good, then the state is accountable for the delivery of its services. So, so it's a good time for for us. We on a very personal perspective, I don't see many things changing. I don't see I don't see a whole overhauling of the system. I really don't see that. At least in the near future, I don't see that. But it is a good time for organizations to retrospectively strengthen its work around policy advocacy and holding the state accountable to its delivery of services, and which would be access to universal education. The National RTE Forum, for many years it has talked about how the call for, if you're talking about universal access to education, it has to be to the common schooling system. And that is something which is something that agencies working on education has to should look into.
Okay. Yeah, any ending remark would you like to give?
I think considering that the how new the policy is, we really need to, I think, we all need to really look into and engage into the different perspectives revolving revolving the policy. For example, it has clubbed together basically 80% of the population as socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, SEDGs. It includes women, it includes children, it includes children and persons with disabilities, it includes minorities, it includes social scheduled castes, it includes scheduled tribes. We need to keep in mind that that there are constitutional definitions and constitutional remedies for different disadvantaged groups, and the policy has to take into cognizance the constitutional commitments made. So it has to the new education policy has to it's a good time for organizations, individuals, actors, and by and large everyone, to really look into what this policy and how it's going to make its impact at the very at the very household level. Simultaneously, I think we all really need to go back to our respective states, see how the framework for the implementation is going to be developed. That is where our focus should be right now. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Kankana, for joining us. Thanks
Yes.
for your valuable insights. We hope to stay connected, and good luck with everything that you will be working, for the policy, as far as the policy implementation is concerned. Thank you so much for being there.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So I have a question for Preeta. You actually touched upon this, and initially Kankana also had spoken about it. So the policy also emphasizes a lot on vocational training, on vocational skills per se. And then there is this overall multi-exit system that the policy allows for, right? This whole integrated business, there's a lot of echo. Yeah, so this multi-exit system, and I was just trying to, reiterate on the same and try to basically emphasize on how do you really see this vis-a-vis the job market. At one level, there is this whole question of certification. So if somebody just does a 1 or 2 year course and then you just get a mere certification or a diploma, and then how would you exactly, look at this vis-a-vis the current job crisis that we are having in a post-pandemic, if I can say post-pandemic situation? How would you really look at this? Also, Gaurav, can you share your views?
Yeah, actually, that's one of my concerns that I have mentioned in my lecture, that about the vocational courses, I appreciate it. And if a particular person is taking a vocational course in his higher education, like for example, in the undergraduate course, then will he be actually skilled in the 1 year of time to actually do it for earning, actually? For example, vocational course, when you do it for 1 year, like carpentry or other vocations, then will that particular person be skilled enough in 1 year of time to actually do it in a professional level and to make an earning? So that also is one of my concern. And when we talk about multiple entry and exit, actually the main ideology behind this multiple entry and exit is to reduce the dropouts. But I really also do not know how the job opportunity for them will be. That's one of my concern, which I have also mentioned. I have no idea what kind of job opportunity will be given to them, or whether it's just like, yeah, you have a certificate, now at least you are not a dropout. So
we perhaps have to relook this whole definition of dropout now. You know, I have serious concerns on this whole business. Yeah.
Correct. So how will it be implemented? Actually, like I said, rather than waiting, we have no other option. Actually, we have to wait for the time frame that the policy mentions about 2022, 25. Rather than waiting, and rather than how will it be implemented, and whatever action will be taken up by the state in order to actually abide by the policy and to implement it actually into their guidelines, we'll have to wait. That's it I can say.
Of course. Well, maybe you can elaborate on that and also touch upon this whole implementation business, because we have been focusing on this 6% GDP, the funding, and then like Kankana said, education is something that comes under concurrent list. So how do you see, I mean, there are a wide range of implementation challenges that we would be facing. And like you said, you know, it is definitely a very wishful policy. A lot of things have been glorified. It looks very good on paper, but we also need to take a step back and be a little critical in terms of how it would really, because in India, or, you know, from our experience of having worked at the grassroots, what we've realized is everything looks good on paper, but as far as implementation is concerned, that always becomes a major challenge. What really reaches out at the grassroots? So I want you to just elaborate, or, you know, how do you look at this from the implementation perspective, Gourav?
First, I would like to comment on the vocational thing also a little, and then I'll move to this implementation.
Yeah, sure.
Vocational को दो हिस्सों में देखने की जरूरत है. One is the school level, जहाँ पे भी इस पॉलिसी में स्कूल लेवल पे भी बात की गई है, और दूसरा जो है वो फिर हायर एजुकेशन के लेवल पे है. तो स्कूल लेवल पे जब हम वोकेशन की बात करते हैं तो वोकेशन सिर्फ और सिर्फ स्किल डेवलपमेंट करने के लिए नहीं है, कौशल विकास करने के लिए नहीं है, और किसी को भी यानी विद्यार्थी को, स्टूडेंट को मार्केट के लिए तैयार करना उसका उद्देश्य नहीं है. नई तालीम का जो कंसेप्ट है वो यही कहता है कि तो इट इज नॉट स्किल डेवलपमेंट, इट इज स्किल बेस्ड एजुकेशन. कौशल आधारित शिक्षा, कि बच्चा जो है वो काम करे हाथ से, बच्चे बच्चियां जो है वो हाथ से काम करके, और फिर उस कौशल के आधार पे अपने विषयों को समझें. जैसे गांधी जी कहते थे ना कि बच्चा चरखा चलाना सीखेगा तो उससे गणित सीखेगा, उससे मेजरमेंट सीखेगा, उससे मार्केट में या समाज में जो इनइक्वालिटी उसको पहचानना सीखेगा. कि भारत का बच्चा सीखेगा कि किसान को अपने कपास की कीमत नहीं मिल रही है, लेकिन लंकाशायर और मैनचेस्टर की मिलों से आने वाला फैब्रिक जो है वो हजारों गुनी कीमत में बिकता है. तो ये दोनों अलग अलग है, इसको अलग अलग देखने की जरूरत है. और ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है देखना, क्योंकि यदि हम दोनों को, हम असल में स्किल को सिर्फ जॉब के एंगल से देखते हैं, यदि इतना नैरो इसमें हम अपना व्यू पॉइंट रखेंगे, सरकार भी रखेगी असल में, क्योंकि मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है, तो ये बहुत खतरनाक हो जाएगा. क्योंकि फिर हम गोल घूम के वहीं पहुंच जाएंगे जो मेरा इनिशियल क्वेश्चन है कि हु इज डिलीवरिंग एजुकेशन. एंड रिमेंबर, द वन हु विल डिलीवर इट फॉर देयर ओन प्रॉफिट. तो यदि बाजार डिलीवर करेगा तो फिर बाजार अपने लिए डिलीवर करेगा, अपने तरह से उसको ट्वीक करेगा, और फिर ये जो स्किल का क्वेश्चन है ये बहुत कठिन हो जाएगा. जैसा हम पिछले कुछ सालों से देख रहे हैं कि ग्रामीण अंचलों में, बहुत ट्राइबल बेल्ट में जो स्किल डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम चलते हैं, उनमें वोकेशन क्या होता है, रिटेल का वोकेशन हो रहा है. हम जाके गांव में ट्राइबल बेल्ट में बच्चों को रिटेल सिखा रहे हैं. क्यों सिखा रहे हैं? ताकि हम उनको ले जाकर के किसी मॉल में खड़ा करके और कपड़े बेचना सिखा दें, जो उनका मतलब तो ये बहुत खतरनाक भी हो सकता है. इसलिए इस बात को समझा जाना चाहिए. अब आते हैं इम्प्लीमेंटेशन वाली बात पे जो तुमने कहा. कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पे यार मेरा फिर वही क्वेश्चन है कि बार बार हमें ये देखना पड़ेगा कि इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कर कौन रहा है। गवर्नमेंट्स कर रही है, गवर्नमेंट्स को कौन रन कर रहा है, या फिर कौन गवर्नमेंट फॉर्म कर रहा है, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज फॉर्म कर रही है, हमारा पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर कर रहा है। अब हमें देखना है कि हमारे देश के पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर का अपना कितना कमिटमेंट एजुकेशन को लेकर के। पॉलिसी तो हजारों है, कहा अच्छी अच्छी बात कही जा रही है, हालांकि मैं तुमसे इस बात पे भी डिसएग्री करता हूँ कि कोई बहुत अच्छी और बहुत ब्राइट पॉलिसी नहीं, बहुत अच्छी अच्छी बातें कही गई। आप ध्यान से पढ़ेंगे तो आपको बहुत क्लियरली इसमें बहुत सारी ऐसी
लूप
चीजें
होल्स मिलेंगे।
हाँ हाँ, जो बहुत मुझे तो बहुत कमजोर भी दिखती है बहुत सारी जगह। ऐसी कोई बहुत क्रांतिकारी बात कही नहीं है इन्होंने, असल में क्रांतिकारी बात कही जानी चाहिए थी। कुछ ऐसा आता नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में लिख करके जो कहता कि कोचिंग का धंधा बंद हो जाएगा, कुछ ऐसी बात होती कि गवर्नमेंट जो है वो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स को हम बहुत जबरदस्त तरीके से स्ट्रेंथन करेंगे, कुछ इस तरीके की बात अगर होती तो वो शायद एक क्रांतिकारी परिवर्तन मैं उसको मानता। अभी जो बातें कही गई है वो बहुत कॉमन आम बातें हैं, मतलब 10 जो बहुत सारे तथाकथित प्राइवेट स्कूल्स हैं उनके ब्रोशर में ये सब लिखा रहता है, एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग करेंगे और ये करेंगे और वो करेंगे। कोई ऐसी बहुत नई क्रांतिकारी बात नहीं, ये तो लिखे ही जाएगा। 2020 में पॉलिसी लिख रहे हैं, एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग भी नहीं लिखेंगे तो क्या ही लिखेंगे, मतलब। तो ऐसी कोई बहुत महान बात उन्होंने नहीं नहीं लिखी है। ऐसी कुछ बातें हैं, अब जैसे जो एग्जिट और एंट्री एग्जिट, मल्टीपल एंट्री एग्जिट का प्रश्न है, तो होना ही चाहिए, होना चाहिए, उसमें क्या नया है, बहुत ही कॉमन सेंस की बात है वो। लेकिन जो मेजर जब हम इसको देखते हैं तो मुझे ऐसी कोई बहुत क्रांतिकारी परिवर्तन वाली बात नहीं दिखती। अब प्रश्न आता है इम्प्लीमेंटेशन का, जो स्टेट्स के ऊपर रहेगा काफी कुछ, क्योंकि स्कूल एजुकेशन का तो बड़ा हिस्सा जो है स्टेट्स के हाथ में भी है। तो फिर वही क्वेश्चन है कि जो हमारी पूरी पॉलिटिकल रिजीम है, पूरी, मैं एंड टू एंड बात कर रहा हूँ, सारे पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की बात कर रहा हूँ, उनकी अपना कितना कमिटमेंट है एजुकेशन को लेकर के। और पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज का कमिटमेंट तब होगा जब जनता का कमिटमेंट होगा। क्या हम एज पीपल हम एजुकेशन को पब्लिक सर्विस मानते हैं? क्या हमारे घर के सामने की सड़क खराब है, हमारे घर में नल में पानी नहीं आ रहा, हम गवर्नमेंट को क्वेश्चन करते हैं, हम म्यूनसिपल काउंसिल को क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं, पर हमारे बाजू का सरकारी स्कूल बदतर पड़ा हुआ है, वहाँ टीचर नहीं है, हम उसे एज अ पब्लिक सर्विस कंसीडर ही नहीं करते। तो डेमोक्रेसी में जब तक लोग इसे नहीं एक पब्लिक सर्विस की तरह देखेंगे कि यार मेरे टैक्स के पैसे से सरकार बच्चों को पढ़ा रही है ना, मैं भी टैक्स दे रहा हूँ, 1 रुपए का जब कोई सामान खरीदता हूँ तो उसमें 20 पैसे टैक्स दे देता हूँ गवर्नमेंट को। इफ माई फैमिली एक्सपेंडिचर मंथली इज 10,000 rupees in groceries and XYZ things, I'm giving like 3,000 to 4,000 rupees every month to this government for what? To deliver this education. तो अगर वो मेरे पैसे पे ये सब चला रहे हैं तो क्यों नहीं सरकारी स्कूल अच्छा है? तो कहीं ना कहीं इसमें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात ये रहेगी कि लोग, सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस भी, मूवमेंट्स भी, सारे लोग इस बात पे फोकस करें कि हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा सरकारों को और राजनीतिक तंत्र को, पॉलिटिकल स्ट्रक्चर को, हमारे पूरा जो रिजीम्स हैं सारी, उन्हें हम कैसे एजुकेशन के विषय पे ला पाएं, क्योंकि हमें ही लाना पड़ेगा। डेमोक्रेसी में जनता जो मांगती है उनको मिलता है। जनता राम मंदिर मांगेगी तो राम मंदिर मिलेगा, जनता एजुकेशन मांगेगी तो एजुकेशन मिलेगा। इट इज अप टू अस, हम लोग हैं जिन्हें डिसाइड करना है कि हमें क्या चाहिए। तो राम मंदिर तो मिल गया है, तो अब प्रभु श्री राम की कृपा से शिक्षा भी मिल जाए, ऐसी हमें उम्मीद करनी चाहिए।
Good way to put it. Thanks. I think we'll open the floor now. I'm sure people will have a lot of questions. So please raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself and ask.
I think Anwar Hussain raised his hand. Like, would you like to come forward? Like, unmute yourself and Anwar Hussain. I think he have gone. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we would like to hear from the participants if they have any. And I also feel that this policy is actually like the ICSE board or some other boards are actually implementing it already, because I can see that ICSE boards, they give the option to choose this that the students, they can choose if they want to leave any subject from middle level of the education. If they don't want to take up math, then they can just leave it. If they want to choose any kind of business oriented subjects, then they can choose. ICSE is already, I think, doing it and not categorizing between science and arts. And about the 10 exam also, I feel that it is already being that if they don't want to change the school, then they can choose not to write the 10th exam. Something like that is already being there in the under CBSE and ICSE, I believe. So a lot of things are not new, like Kankana ma'am and Gaurav has said.
I can see Dinesh Nath unmuting himself. Mr. Dinesh Nath, would you like to ask?
Sir, there are some questions on our Facebook page. So Vikas Haruvat says how it will make great difference on customization of Indian traditional education subject.
Priyanshu, can you just say it again or type it in the chat box? It's very unclear, your audio.
Okay, wait a second.
So say that again.
How it will make great difference on customization of Indian traditional education subject.
How it will make great difference or impact on
customization of Indian traditional education subject.
On Indian traditional education system.
That's the question from our participant on Facebook Live.
Someone has asked through Facebook Live. Would you like to take that, Gaurav? Impact. How it will make great difference. Okay.
Just a second, I'm trying to see the question on Facebook Live to read it. Just a second. Does the government... Okay. I'm sorry, I can't see the question. Can you please repeat?
Yes, sir. I'm just...
It's not very clear.
Yes, sir.
How it will make great difference on customization of Indian traditional subjects.
Yeah.
Okay. So one, I think इसमें एक समझने की का बात ये भी है कि इंडियन ट्रेडिशनल सब्जेक्ट्स क्या हैं, हम किन्हें इंडियन ट्रेडिशनल सब्जेक्ट्स कहेंगे. तो मुझे एक तो ये प्रश्न ईमानदारी से मैं बताऊं तो मुझे बहुत समझ नहीं आया, फिर भी मैं कोशिश करता हूं कि इंडियन ट्रेडिशनल और ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन सिस्टम और उसके विषयों के बारे में मेरी जो समझ है वो मैं कहने का प्रयास करता हूं. तो एक तो हमारे यहाँ एक ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन सिस्टम जिसे हम गुरुकुल पद्धति और ये कहते हैं कि एक समय पे ये सारा हुआ करता था, उसके अपने फायदे थे, उसके अपने नुकसान थे. फायदे ये थे कि वो एक बहुत ही ऑर्गेनिक तरह से पढ़ाए जाने की वाली प्रक्रिया थी, परिवार की तरह लोग रहते थे, ऐसा हम पढ़ते हैं अपनी पौराणिक कथाओं में. लेकिन वो सबके लिए नहीं था. इट वॉज नॉट एन इक्विटेबल सिस्टम. एंड द काइंड ऑफ एजुकेशन सिस्टम दैट वी right now are trying to build for our country is based on our constitutional values, and equity is one of our major constitutional value कि जो भी हो वो सबके लिए हो, सभी के लिए हो. और ट्रेडिशंस का जब क्वेश्चन आता है तो ट्रेडिशंस इंडिया में अक्रॉस द कंट्री बहुत डाइवर्स हैं और उसके साथ में इक्विटी को मैनेज करना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है. तो ये मुझे मतलब दिस इज व्हाट माय कमेंट on this question is, as it was very blur for me to understand the question.
Yeah, I have another question. Like disability के बारे में sign language को mainstream किया जा करने के बारे में बात किया गया है. But when we talk about disability, it's a huge and wide spectrum. You know, it's autism का भी बहुत सारा different form हो सकता है. You know, physically or emotionally, mentally. Disability cannot be disability cannot be standardized. So when we talk about curriculum जो school में है, so do you see like even though it has been just vaguely mentioned, कुछ reformation इसके बारे में बात किया गया है, or like have there been any discussion about it? Yeah, Gaurav or Preeta, any one of you can take up that question.
Okay. So should I take a Preeta? Are you answering?
Yeah, go ahead, Gaurav.
Fine. So I think ये question ही बहुत valid है. Your question comments on the larger problem कि disability इस वक्त मेरी समझ में inclusion का पूरा concept जो है वो भारत में अभी evolving है, and it will take some more time for us to actually develop an understanding of what inclusion is and how far we can how far we have to go still. So this education policy, the good thing is that it talks about, and it sounds really progressive at this end. इसमें यदि हम historically implementation के स्तर पे देखें तो we'll see that जैसे Right to Education Act में जहाँ स्कूल बिल्डिंग्स के बारे में कहा गया था, बिल्डिंग कोड ऑफ इंडिया को कोट करते हुए, तो उन्होंने उसमें क्लियर किया था कि एक्सेसिबिलिटी उसमें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन था. सारे स्कूल्स में रैम्प्स होने चाहिए, टॉयलेट्स एक्सेसिबल होने चाहिए, जो डिसेबिलिटी फ्रेंडली टॉयलेट्स होने चाहिए. तो ये बातें पहले की एजुकेशन लॉज में, मतलब राइट टू एजुकेशन तो एक्ट था, उस कानून में थी, और इस पॉलिसी में भी एटलीस्ट बात की जा रही है, प्रोग्रेसिवली बात की जा रही है. ये एक बहुत अच्छी खबर है. लेकिन इसमें बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात यही रहेगी कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा अलग अलग, और फिर एक और बात जो मुझे याद आ रही है वो है एक तो लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज वाला जो एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन है, उसके लिए टीचर्स को तैयार करना एक बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज रहेगा. कि जो अलग अलग तरह की लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज हैं उस विषय में हम कैसे अपने शिक्षकों को प्रैक्टिकली ट्रेन करें. यानी हम सिर्फ पढ़ा देना या उसे कोर्स में रखना, क्योंकि बीएड के कोर्स में वो अभी भी है, लेकिन यदि हम लार्जली शिक्षकों की समझ इस विषय में देखेंगे तो वो बहुत कमजोर है, बहुत ही कमजोर है. तो ये 2-3 बातें हैं जो मुझे इस विषय में कहनी है. एक तो कि मैं खुश हूँ इस बात से, इस पॉलिसी में ये बात प्रोग्रेसिवली रखी गई है. लेकिन दूसरी बात इसमें ये है कि एक तो लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटीज वगैरह पे शिक्षकों को तैयार करने का जो एक बहुत मेजर क्वेश्चन है, और दूसरा हमें भी एज पीपल, एज सोसाइटी अभी इस विषय में बहुत इवॉल्व होने की जरूरत है. दिस इज व्हाट आई थिंक.
Gaurav, I just realized something. पूरा document में peace के बारे में बोला क्या है, and there have been talk about tolerance, critical thinking, but the word secular has been missing, if I'm not wrong. The word secularism. It's like I don't know, like the direction of the policy, किस हिसाब से उसको लिया जा रहा है. When we like, can you say something about it?
ये पॉलिसी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की बात तो करती है. तो जहाँ मतलब वो तो देखिए, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की अगर बात है तो फिर सेक्युलरिज्म इज लाइक इट इज पार्ट ऑफ योर प्रीएम्बल. तो उस पे तो ये है ही. तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि इसको बहुत इस बात को हमें मतलब सीरियसली लेना चाहिए. और लेकिन हाँ, क्योंकि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की बात है, तो फिर बात बहुत क्लियर है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज, चाहे वो इक्विटी हो, लिबर्टी हो, फ्रेटर्निटी हो, सोशलिस्ट, सेक्युलर रिपब्लिक, डेमोक्रेटिक रिपब्लिक इंडिया बनाने की बात हो, तो हम अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के स्टैंड पे तो हैं. ये बात इस पॉलिसी में क्लियर.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience?
Yes, I have one. Hello, am I
Yeah,
audible?
please go ahead. Yes, you are.
Okay, so limitation to the fees chargeable by any college or school was also mentioned in the previous policy, right? But there was no implementation. Do you like what do you say about that? Will it be implemented now? And do you think we need more policies which talk solely about this?
Preeta, would you like to take it?
See, as far as the fee is concerned, as a principal, I can say that being a private college or a private school, we depend on the fee collected from the students actually. And to maintain the standard set by the regulating authority, right? We need a fee actually, a good amount of fee, or we'll say the required amount of fee we have to collect. But this policy also talks about a scholarship, right? And being a principal of a law college, I can say that the STs, SCs, and OBCs and the minorities, they get scholarships actually. Like I know our students have been getting scholarship every year. So it's somewhat like a free education is happening little bit. I do not say that the scholarship is being given to all the students or it is given to all sects of students. I know again the students belonging to general category, they do not get any kind of scholarship. It's only for the socially and economically backward people the scholarship is being given. So you know what, the person who is asking the question, I really I empathize, I understand your question. And what we can do is, if the government is ready to help, or if the government is ready to liberalize in terms of all these factors, then maybe some amount of fee may be reduced from the colleges and schools. But if we do not get any help from the government, and if the government also is not in the capacity to intake all the students, you know, all the students under their institution, then where will other students go rather than going into private colleges or private schools? So that is like private and government has to coexist. And when it comes to fee, if the private schools and colleges doesn't get any kind of help from the government, we are helpless. Rather than taking fee from the students, we have nothing else to do actually. And if government is ready to liberalize, we are also ready to give up. We are also ready to reduce the fee, is what I can say.
I just want to add something to it. So this question is, so it is a political question actually. Your question that it mentions of fee regulation, but will it get implemented? My answer to it is maybe no, because the question is that who's going to implement it? It is the democratically elected governments, and who and what is the role of private players in democratically electing government? And it is very clear that there is a very prominent role of even bigger corporations who intend to enter education business, which, like, just to quote Geo University as an example. So it is obviously not going to happen. So it is not going to happen as long as we as citizens are not going to pressurize government to do that. So one thing is that I think it will not happen as far as governments are not democratically pressurized to do it. Second is, even fixing a fee limit can be a very problematic issue sometimes. Like we have seen, for an example, in my state, state government fixed a limit for a fee limit for some professional courses like engineering, and that fee limit itself was so high that it was impossible for a general middle class or a lower middle class of this state to afford it. Like government fixed 70,000 rupees a year. So even fixing a limit will actually solve the issue. I'm not sure. So I just wanted to add this.
Okay.
Yeah, even one thing is that if the government is ready to provide scholarships to all the section of the students, actually, that will be really good. If like those students who are studying in a private institutions, if the government is ready to take up their responsibility, if not complete giving scholarship for a complete fee amount, but at least the 50 or 60% of the fee amount, if it is being given back by the government to the student, like as a form of a scholarship. Right now, it is happening to my college students, those who belong to STSCs. Actually, if they pay 22,000 as a fee, they are getting 25 to 28,000 as a scholarship. So it's like a actually they are getting help in a way. But so the same approach has to be done for the school education also, and to all the other courses. Actually, I feel scholarship should be provided by the government, and if that is happening, then students also will not be deprived of their rights.
I just want to add one thing. I'm sorry.
Sure, please.
This scholarship point is that if we see, so there was this 12A clause in Right to Education Act, which says that 25% of students in economically backward class students in private schools will be funded by government. So it is kind of a scholarship program कि private schools में जो 25% बच्चे हैं उनकी फीस सरकार देगी. वैसे ही अब इसमें एक बेसिक क्वेश्चन रेज ये होता है कि क्या प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस की फीस भरना सरकार का काम है. तो आई जस्ट वांट टू रेज दिस क्वेश्चन कि क्या हमारे टैक्स के पैसे से जो हम सरकार को दे रहे हैं, हम क्या उम्मीद कर रहे हैं? क्या हम ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि सरकार जो है वो प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस की फीस भरे, या हम ये उम्मीद कर रहे हैं कि सरकार एजुकेशन दे? तो इट इज अ क्वेश्चन इन फ्रंट ऑफ ऑल ऑफ अस. हम सबको ये क्वेश्चन खुद से पूछना चाहिए. आई एम जस्ट रेजिंग दिस क्वेश्चन कि स्कॉलरशिप्स जो हैं वो एक सर्टेन मुझे लगता है कुछ हम ये कहें कि भारत में कोई एक ऐसा प्रोग्राम है जो मान लीजिए कुछ आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस में कुछ बहुत स्पेशलाइजेशन प्रोग्राम किसी एक यूनिवर्सिटी ने शुरू किया. अब वहां पर भी एक दूरस्थ गांव का, ट्राइबल बेल्ट का या किसी रूरल एरिया का, बैकवर्ड एरिया का बच्चा पहुंच सके और वो उसको अफोर्ड कर सके, उसके लिए स्कॉलरशिप हो सकती है. लेकिन जब हम इन जनरल एक हायर एजुकेशन के प्रोग्राम्स की बात कर रहे हैं या स्कूल की बात कर रहे हैं, तो यहाँ पर फिर रोल क्या हो गवर्नमेंट का, ये मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है. और इसमें एक चीज और ये भी होती है, वो ये होती है कि जब हम ये कहते हैं कि गवर्नमेंट विल पे इन प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस, तो फिर क्या हम ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूट, क्या ये गवर्नमेंट डिक्लेयर कर रही है कि गवर्नमेंट नहीं दे सकती एजुकेशन, गवर्नमेंट पैसे दे देती है, तो हम एजुकेशन नहीं दे सकते, हम तो पैसे दे रहे हैं. तो यदि एजुकेशन पैसे से ही आनी है और सिर्फ एजुकेशन सिर्फ पैसे का ही क्वेश्चन है, अगर सिर्फ फाइनेंशियल क्वेश्चन ही है, उस नंबर का क्वेश्चन है, तो फिर हमें गवर्नमेंट की और नेशनल न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी की जरूरत क्या है? फिर गवर्नमेंट क्यों बना रही है पॉलिसी? पैसे ही दे दे. तो ये भी एक क्वेश्चन है कि सरकार का रोल क्या है जो इस स्कॉलरशिप वाले मामले में रिफ्लेक्ट करता है. और राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट में हम देख चुके हैं कि प्राइवेट स्कूल्स में अगर हम देखें कि स्टेट्स कितना पैसा प्राइवेट स्कूल्स को एज फी दे रहे हैं स्कॉलरशिप के नाम पे, वो जो बजट है उसको अगर हम एनालाइज करेंगे तो हम पाएंगे कि वो इतना पैसा है कि उतने पैसे में तो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स बहुत अच्छे बन सकते थे, उतने पैसे में टीचर्स रेगुलर किए जा सकते थे. तो जितना पैसा हम स्कॉलरशिप में दे रहे हैं उतने में गवर्नमेंट खुद बहुत अच्छे कॉलेजेस चला सकती है, जबकि गवर्नमेंट कॉलेजेस आज भी स्टूडेंट्स प्रेफर करते हैं. तो फिर सरकार एजुकेशन से विड्रॉ क्यों करना चाहती है? सिर्फ पैसे देकर के विड्रॉ क्यों करना चाहती है? हमने पॉलिसी बना दी, हमने पैसे दे दिए, हम विड्रॉ हो गए. ये एक क्वेश्चन है जो आई जस्ट वांटेड टू रेज.
Right. Thank you. Actually, I hope Ailana, your question has been answered, or perhaps left you with many more questions, which is in fact rather a better thing, than to just directly have an answer to these things. So we have already overstepped on time, so we will have to call it a day and wrap up the session for the day. So once again, on behalf of the Anajuri team, thank you so much, Gourav and Preeta. Kankana has already exited the session. So thanks to the amazing speakers and definitely our participants who have joined us. A lot of you were new for us today. And of course, what I've realized is that perhaps today's discussion has, opened up a can of worms, and it will also make us relook and rethink on a number of issues that has been flagged off today, and which is in fact an important thing to, these questions need to keep bothering us, because we as conscious citizens, it is important for us to keep challenging these structures, keep questioning and critiquing, and not just take everything as it comes or as it is served on a platter to us. So I think it's really important that we take these kind of new approaches, new policies, always be a little skeptical or critical of things, and take these things with a pinch of salt, perhaps. So with this as my closing...
Meenakshi, I just wanted to add something.
Sure, please go ahead. Yes.
So, sir, we were talking about many policies, education policies, like every year something or other comes up. But do you think that someday or other, our students will have that kind of mental strength to come out of the rat race and do something like Elon Musk or like bigger entrepreneurs, something like that, like coming out of the rat race, that kind of implementation teachers can do?
About coming out of the rat race, basically this whole rat race business, and how do you visualize someone as Elon Musk? Can we really envision that? That's what his question is, I think, if I got you correctly.
Yes.
I think we have answered this somewhere in the discussion before, that this policy talks about, so as I said, we were expecting that it will talk about more liberal assessment processes, क्योंकि जब हम rat race की बात करते हैं, तो it is about assessment, कि हम ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि पूरे साल बच्चों ने क्या पढ़ा, उसका 3 घंटे के एग्जाम में तय हो जाएगा, और वही रेट रेस है कि किसके 94.3% है और किसके 94.35% है. तो हम ये मान के चल रहे थे कि दिस पॉलिसी विल एक्चुअली टॉक अबाउट मोर लिबरल वेज ऑफ असेसमेंट, जो इसने कहीं ऐसा दिखता तो है कि ये पॉलिसी बात कर रही है, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली अगर हम इसको थोड़ा बिटवीन द वर्ड्स रीड करने की कोशिश करेंगे, तो हम बोर्ड एग्जाम्स पे ज़्यादा एम्फसाइज कर रहे हैं, हम वापस बोर्ड एग्जाम के पैटर्न की तरफ जाने की बात कर रहे हैं, जो कि या फिर हम नेशनल जो टेस्टिंग अथॉरिटी की बात कर रहे हैं. तो ये सारी चीजें जो हैं, ये स्टैंडर्डाइज टेस्टिंग को प्रमोट करने का काम, और जितना जितना स्टैंडर्डाइज टेस्टिंग प्रमोट होगा, उतना ही ज्यादा प्रमोट होगा हमारा. जैसे अभी एक सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस चल रहा है कि जहां कुछ पेरेंट्स हैं जो गए हुए हैं, और वो कह रहे हैं कि इस साल जो कॉम्पिटिटिव एग्जामिनेशंस हैं, उनकी वजह जो बच्चे का बोर्ड का रिजल्ट है, उसके ही आधार पे हायर एजुकेशन में एडमिशन हो जाए. सुप्रीम कोर्ट में अभी वो केस है. तो अब उसको लेकर के मैं देख रहा था कि बहुत सारे जो कोचिंग क्लासेस वाले हैं, उनके पेट में बहुत दर्द है, क्योंकि उन्हें लग रहा है कि अगर नीट नहीं होगा, ये नहीं होगा, तो कैसे चलेगा काम, क्योंकि उनका बिजनेस है, उनका धंधा है. तो हम असल में ये रैट रेस, मार्केट, बाजार, ये सब जुड़ा हुआ है आपस में, और इस पॉलिसी को अगर हम थोड़ा ध्यान से देखेंगे, तो ये उसे असल में बढ़ाने का काम कर रही है, उसे कम करने का काम नहीं कर रही. तो हम थोड़ी लिबरल टेस्टिंग लिख जरूर रहे हैं, लेकिन मैं एक बात आखिरी में बोलना चाहता हूँ कि देखिए, दुनिया में कोई भी गलत काम कभी भी गलत बोल के नहीं किया जाता. आई रिपीट, दुनिया में कोई भी गलत काम कभी भी गलत बोल के नहीं किया जाता. मतलब रावण ने भी अगर सीता हरण किया होगा, तो उसने ये कह के नहीं किया होगा कि मैं तो रावण हूं और मैं बहुत आई एम एन इविल पर्सन एंड आई वांट टू डू समथिंग रॉन्ग. उसके पीछे भी जस्टिफिकेशन होगा कि आई एम डूइंग समथिंग, दिस इज व्हाट आई एम डूइंग, क्योंकि मुझे अपने स्टेट की ग्लोरी बढ़ानी है, या नेशनलिज्म, जो भी व्हाटएवर. तो वैसे ही इस पॉलिसी को भी हमें थोड़ा क्रिटिकल समझना पड़ेगा कि बोल तो रहे हैं कि हम एक लिबरल असेसमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन अगर हम उसे ध्यान से देखें, तो हम असल में और स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड असेसमेंट की तरफ बढ़ेंगे, ऐसा मेरी समझ है इस पॉलिसी को लेकर के. और जितना हम और स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड असेसमेंट की तरफ बढ़ेंगे, उतना ही ज्यादा रैट रेस का प्रॉब्लम बढ़ेगा. और फिर जैसे जैसे हम अपने माइंड से हम एजुकेशन के पर्पस को सोशल, मैं समाज की बात कर रहा हूँ, पॉलिसी की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, समाज जितना एजुकेशन के पर्पस को सिर्फ जॉब मान के चलेगा, नौकरी की शिक्षा क्यों दे रहे हैं, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं कि कोई नौकरी लग जाए, जॉब ओरिएंटेड एजुकेशन हो जाए, तो उतना रैट रेस बढ़ेगी. तो हमें एजुकेशन के पर्पस को बहुत वाइड सोचने की जरूरत है. एजुकेशन का पर्पस समाज का निर्माण करना है, इस बेहतर दुनिया का निर्माण करना है. एजुकेशन का पर्पस जॉब दिलाना नहीं है, सिर्फ जॉब दिलाना नहीं, जॉब दिलाना एक छोटा सा उसका हिस्सा हो सकता है। तो ये मुझे लगता है कि इस पॉलिसी से थोड़ा सा डिसअपॉइंटमेंट इस बात पे मेरा है।
Priyanshu, did you
yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think I totally agree with what Gourav just said. And like I just mentioned, it's really important to have these, critical thinking, to take things with a little bit of skepticism. And it's better, the more we have questions, the more we continue to challenge these structures, challenge power. That is what should be, our perhaps how we need to operate and function as conscious citizens. So with this, I would like to close today's session. So once again, thank you, participants. Thank you to the great speakers, Gourav and Preeta, once again. Thanks for agreeing to be part of the session. With this, I'd like to end today's session. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Gourav. Thanks, Preeta. Yeah.
Bye, God. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.